What is up, guys? Creative Arts here, and this is going to be part 3 of my graffiti tutorial. Today I will be showing you how to make the desktop background that I make in all my graffiti speed arts. So just open up Photoshop and you just start with a basic template of 1280 by 720. And then what I always start off with is I have a dark gray to a darker gray gradient, and that looks like this. And I also have this white to a little middle gray, lighter gray, sort of like that. And since we're doing the flue graffiti and I rendered that out in a light blue, the white will complement the color better. So we're going to do the white gradient. And I mean, it's just really simple in terms of making these. Just create a new gradient and select the colors you want. And it sort of makes the transition really smooth instead of seeing all the, I don't even know how to call it, just sort of the rough edges that appear out of, they're sort of distorted, I should say. So now we're gonna open up the graffiti. So this is the graffiti we finished off with after the last video, and we're just gonna sort of place it in the center. Like that. Yeah, that's good. Okay. So after we do that, we'll add our effects. We already have the gradient overlay from it from last video. Now we'll also add a drop shadow. We'll set that to a 15 pixel distance. The spread will be 17%, and the size will be 10. And we'll set that opacity to 35%, just because 25%, just because it's on a lighter background. So now that that's done with, we make a duplicate layer. And I like merging it just with a blank layer. So that way when you erase it, or when you erase the lower part of the layer, it sort of just erases smoother and you avoid some of the shadow. So just position this just sort of centered with the other smaller piece of graffiti like that, and set its opacity to 20%. Just like that. And now take an eraser and sort of just go over the bottom of it, and then there you go. That's a nice little backing. Let's actually make it a little bit bigger. Alright, there we go. Okay, so now once that we've done that, we could start adding our textures. Now I always start with a black grunge brush. And this is everything that I use here is available in my 3K GFX pack, so I'll link that below. And what I just do is I go around the edges, set it to overlay, then you just sort of erase around the graffiti so that the texture is just around it but doesn't take up the whole background. Alright, so just like that. Now we also add some more textures, and I sort of have two textures that I always like using, and any more that you want to use is up to you. So there's this texture, pretty standard one, and then this one. So we'll drag those into the background, set them to overlay. Anywhere between 20 and 50% I like to use. This depends on how much you want the texture to appear. And then we're just going to do the same thing, erase around the edges. So there you could kind of see the cracks going through. And then we're going to do the same with this texture. overlay, and we'll do 50% with this one. So we'll just erase everything out. Alright, so it's still sort of plain. So what I like to do is I add circles and I just sort of add effects around the text. And I already have in my GFX pack under the exclusive, I have a thing called PNGs for your background. And for this tutorial's purpose, I'll just use those. So we have triangles, arrows, circles, and a grunge bar. I really like using the grunge bar. So there we go. Let's stretch it out a bit to fit the graffiti. And you could arrange this in any way you want. You could have multiple grunge bars instead of just one. So for this one, we'll just have them creating a very long X. I'll merge those layers and I'll set them to overlay. And these ones you want to have them a little bit stronger just so they're a little more apparent. So I'll set them to an 80% opacity. And we'll just sort of have that. Actually, let's add one more group of these, so 2 more. And we'll rotate them that way. Cool. Alright, so then we'll set them to overlay again. They were already at 80%, so now just these ones you'll erase a little bit further back just so they're a little more apparent. Alright, so there we go. There's a little more grunge. Okay, so now there's a lot of things you could do with the text. You could add some bubbles around it or triangles. And you could do the bubbles, as I call them, in 2 ways. You could have them sort of with an outline. And let me show you an example of that. I did it with this background right here, where I have an outline of the graffiti, and the bubbles are just the same color as that. Or we could do what we're going to do in this video is we're just going to have a bunch of black dots around the edge without an outline on the graffiti. So for this, I go to this elliptical marquee tool and I just hold shift and I just make dots. I try to connect them, add sort of random ones out there. And you're just going to go around the whole graffiti logo and continuously just add these dots where you feel like they should be. And make them vary in size a bit just to not make them look so similar with one another. And what I sometimes like doing on letters like this is I'll add 3 little dots in decreasing size, 3 little bubbles in decreasing size just with online with that layer. So it creates a cool little effect. So after we do that, we're going to right click, fill, and for this first layer we'll make them black. So we have that. So these ones are sort of out of place. So let's rotate them a bit, move them a little closer. And these ones right here. Alright, so What we're going to do to these is add a drop shadow, and we'll set the distance to 0. We'll make the spread, make it 10 pixels and the size 5 pixels, and that's about that. And then we'll set them to overlay. Not overlay, never mind. We'll keep them at normal. And let's have these at, actually we'll have these at 100% opacity, that's good. And now we'll add some more circles or bubbles, and these will just sort of be around the graffiti. You can position these wherever you like. And you could fill these with 2 colors. You could either do white, or in this case, I'm going to use the color of the graffiti, or find a similar color. So you go to Fill, Color, and just find that color that you like. So that matches it. So we'll do that. And now we'll add the drop shadow again. So I could just copy the layer style of the previous bubbles. We'll do this, and we'll set it to we'll do a 20% opacity on these. Okay. Also, for the drop shadow on this lighter layer, let's set the opacity to 35%. So we have that. Now we're going to add sort of a highlight to the graffiti. So we just create a box or a rectangle. We fill it with white, and we're just going to place this over the graffiti right there. We'll set it to overlay, and we'll make the opacity 10%. And we'll add a drop shadow to it. And you can just keep it as it is. I'll set the opacity to 35%, the size to 16, and the distance 10. Cool. So that adds a nice little effect to it also. So now we're going to add the scan lines. So under my graphics pack and exclusive, opening the scan lines up, and we'll just drag them over here. Put them on the background, and we'll rasterize the layer, and we'll just sort of, this one you don't go right around the graffiti, because I like having it a little, I like having it go outside the graffiti a bit more than the textures. So we'll just keep it around like that. Just like that. And then we'll set them to overlay, and we'll make their opacity 30%. Let's do 20%. Okay, cool. So I think that's about it with these graffiti backgrounds. You could add effects to the main graffiti itself, but I like just leaving it simple how it is. So now we'll just add some gradient maps. I have a white to black gradient map. We'll set that to overlay. We'll make the opacity, let's go 25% on that one. Now we'll add the purple to orange, or the violet to orange. We'll set that to soft light, and we'll make the opacity on that 15%, and then we'll just add some curves. So we'll go a little bit below and a little bit above, and now after doing that, just make some adjustments with the opacity of other things. Like I don't like how strong the black circles are, so we'll change the opacity to 20%. And you could always just add more textures around, add blood splatters, look cool, things like that. But that's just pretty much all there is to making these graffiti desktop backgrounds. It's just keeping the text the center of attention and adding effects and textures around it. So that's the final part of my graffiti tutorial series. If you guys want to learn anything else, preferably maybe not about graffiti, just because I kind of want to get off that in terms of tutorials, I maybe do something different. Maybe you guys want to learn how to do a background. I know I'm not exactly known for that, but it doesn't matter. So just tell me anything you guys want to learn in the comments below. I'm Creative Arts, and that's it. Peace.